Hi there, this is Joe Quinn. Again, I am continuing a short series of readings of some books on topics that I find of interest, and I'm using the venue of the Calvin Coolidge Library to bring this to you. Basically today I was reading through today's New York Post, and one of the issues in the paper today was about Albany bids to strip Mike's school control. So evidently they're talking about a variety of contentious matters here, and the mayor seems to think that the UFT is exercising inordinate control over the situation, or is at least trying to. So interestingly enough, therefore, in coming to the library today, sometimes I gravitate to a particular corner where there are some interesting books. All the books here are pretty interesting. But I picked out 3 books, and I'm going to read from 1 or 2 of them. Now, this is an idea. This is some of the books here are very ornate, very beautiful. For example, this book here, Theodore Roosevelt and His Times. If you just look at the inlay of this particular book, really beautiful. Now, this particular library. Now, here are 3 different books. One book regarding teaching in the unions in New York City will come from a book called A Small Voice. Here's another book here on the Constitution of the United States. But the reason why I'm showing this to you here is because the book plate here will identify where we are right now. This is the book plate that you'd find in quite a few of the books with the signature Calvin Coolidge. This reproduction of the personal bookplate of Calvin Coolidge is used by the Women's National Republican Club by the gracious permission of Mrs. Coolidge as the bookplate of the Calvin Coolidge Memorial Library. So this is where we are. For example, this particular book is on the Constitution of the United States, a brief study of the genesis, formulation, and political philosophy of the Constitution of the United States, together with 2 addresses on the Supreme Court. Now, these books are gathered over a long period of time. But let's go to the particular book that I chose today. This one's called A Small Voice by Michael King, and he was a syndicated political columnist of the New York and Brooklyn Daily. And it's published by the Center for Political Studies in 1966. And I'm going to pick one particular article here. It's short, and this pertains to the article in today's newspaper. So I figured I'd read this, get a little perspective from perhaps 30, 40 years ago. Our lesson for today. 1 million children brought into the world with a mixture of pain and loving mercy by their fathers and mothers are entrusted to the tender care of teachers in the New York City public school system. From September through June, the apples of their parents' eyes bid their sires adieu each morning for 5 or 6 hours, come under the benign influence of a person unrelated to them by blood, friendship, or neighborhood affiliation. It is not unreasonable to assume that doting fathers and clinging mothers make the supreme sacrifice on the premise that by going to school, the child will receive an exposure to an environment calculated to make him a somewhat more perfect individual than might otherwise be the case. It is not wild speculation to reason that a parent hopes that a school will install within her offspring elementary concepts of respect of law and order, and the responsibility of an individual within a democracy to obey the statutes and ordinances of a legislature that he, along with his other fellow Americans, elected in free and secret ballot. Surely no parent can be expected to acquiesce in the influencing of her cherub toward a concept of life which places him at the center of the universe, free to disregard order and authority because that authority does not quite agree with his evaluation of himself. Any teacher who would so taint the mind of a youngster would hardly be expected to bring a smile to a parent's eye. But life, being a master of illogic, all the above is apparently not true. The teachers of New York City, whose molders of our American democratic law-abiding youth, are in the process of setting an abject example of just what their concept of a mature, law-abiding democratic American is. These teachers have an organization which represents them all in discussions with the City of New York pertaining to the material benefits of life. Known as the United Federation of Teachers, it is headed by a guider of youth named Charles Cogan. Mr. Cogan and his fellow teachers, in common with a great many people in New York, including firemen, policemen, welfare workers, sanitation men, want more money. There is one rather formidable obstacle in the way of this noble thought. The City of New York has little money, either for teachers or a great many other deserving people. Now, this unfortunate fact of life might stop a more reasonable man than Mr. Cogan, but the professor is made of sterner stuff. Find the money, he demands, and the budget be damned. Furthermore, he declares, as his pupils pay careful heed to his lecture on citizenship, if the money, $56 million in immediate raises, is not forthcoming, the teachers will strike. Now, our state has a law known as the Condon-Walden Act, which forbids municipal strikes, and thus Mr. Cogan and his molders of men are advocating violation of the law. It is also true that this respected pedagogue this week referred to the possibility of a court injunction preventing a strike in the following manner. If there is a strike and the board gets an injunction, we will not obey it. We will recommend that our teachers disobey it. The question now becomes, what will be done with Mr. Cogan and his fellow makers of mature Americans? A suggested first step is to clear up some rather foggy points which have been strewn about the papers by Cogan. The law is made for all men, even teachers. Obedience to it does not depend on agreement with its merits, except in the case of a statute so heinous that it is repugnant to decency and morality. In the latter category are laws passed by totalitarian powers without the consent of the governed, and tyrannical and inhumane laws, such as passed by Nazi Germany. I submit that the Condon-Walden Act does not fall into either of these two categories. It is not unreasonable to forbid government employees who operate critical areas of the nation's machinery to strike. It is not repugnant to democracy to prevent policemen from allowing crime a free rein while they strike for higher wages, or to demand that the education of a future generation not be suspended by demands for more money. Civil servants may not like such a law, but there are always two remedies for this. They can cease being civil servants, or they can adjust to the democratic process of repeal of the law through the appropriate channels. There are a great many people who do not begin at $5,200 a year and stand to finish with $10,000. It therefore suggests that Mr. Cogan and his breed are not quite peons of a coolie system. The breakdown of law and order and the introduction of anarchy and chaos begins with contempt and disobedience of legislative authority. It is completed when that very authority refuses to assert itself against its detractors. It is hoped that the mayor of New York will realize this and draw from it the all too rare courage to stand up against threats of labor leaders, reform groups, and the rest to assert the primacy of the law, the one thing that stands between us and chaos. The teachers, if they strike, should pay the full penalty of the law. As Mr. Cogan and his executive board, a permanent retirement from the business of molding future Americans is heartily recommended. For the next week or two, a great many parents and children will be watching this lesson in citizenship very carefully. Written August 20th, 1963. Some interesting things. And so looking at our recent history, recent past, this is from the 1960s. Will give us a better idea of perhaps what's going on now. So, I hope you enjoyed this brief rendition, and we'll see what happens with the mayor's plan. And if you'd like to read more about it, you can pick up the Daily Post. Thank you very much, and have a great day.